Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Kofefi. Today is Wednesday, October 9th. I'm Carter Laren, and I'm joined, as always, by the bad mamma jamma from Texas, Keri Smith. Good morning, Keri.
Good morning, Carter.
How'd you sleep?
I slept pretty good. How about you?
Good.
Carter has no power.
Well, I have power at the moment. So California is very. I want everyone to understand. California is very progressive and advanced technologically. The only caveat is about 2 million of us are going to have no power for a few days because there's some wind. But other than that, the socialists are doing a great job of running the state. So we've got like many places, the power here is state enforced monopoly. So I think there's like 3 or 4 different companies in different parts of the state that have power. But one of the biggest ones, I guess the biggest one is PG&E, and they cover Northern California. And I looked them up today. Their market cap is like $6 billion or just less than $6 billion. And according to CNN, I don't believe CNN, but according to CNN, they've paid like $11 billion in insurance claims for 2017 wildfires because they were supposedly caused by like downed power lines or something. I don't believe CNN because I don't think they paid more than their market cap, although they are now bankrupt. So who knows? And this year they agreed to pay another $1 billion for other fires that happened supposedly related to downed power lines. So so instead of fixing their technology or doing anything sane like that, they're just turning off the power because it's a little bit windy. So if you're wondering what it will be like to have renewable power, renewable resources generating electricity, it will be like this, but worse. You'll just lose power because except you'll lose power because it's not a windy day or it's not sunny enough or whatever.
I like that they sent you an email that's like, hey, you're not going to have power for a couple of days.
Yeah, they sent me a little text. It says, we may turn off power for 24 to 48 hours, but then the news is saying, and the government is like, well, prepare to not have power for 7 days. Yeah, okay. That's a first world country thing. I was telling my wife who grew up in China, I feel kind of embarrassed because she married me and here she is in like America and all her friends in Shenzhen have power. She's like, I don't understand. We have typhoons and they don't shut down the power. Like, what's the problem? Why? What's going on? Like, yeah, sorry, honey. No power. Welcome to America.
No, welcome to California.
Been here for a while. It's funny.
California thing.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm dealing with. If I lose power halfway through this conversation, we'll have half a Kofefi, I guess. Assuming I can run to a Starbucks that has power somewhere and download this and post it again. But Keri, I wanted to talk about something that's not about power. You posted this thing, so I never thought I would say let's talk about Ellen DeGeneres. First of all, in my life, that's a statement I never expected nor wanted to say. But and I don't have anything against her. I don't know anything about Ellen DeGeneres. I don't pay attention to people like that. But there was this thing just to get people up to speed on what happened and why I want to talk about it. So the other day she was photographed at a football game. I think it was Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers. She was photographed at a football game next to George W. Bush. He was in the box with her because she was in the owner's box, and I guess he was there, and they seemed friendly. And of course, there was outrage about this. How dare Ellen be friends with George Bush? And so she then said on her show, she felt the need to explain because there was so much outrage. How dare liberal gay Ellen be friends with, evil right-wing crazy George W. Bush? And she explained on her show, look, when I say be kind and nice to people, like, that's what I mean. And I'm friends with people who disagree with me, and I'm friends with the Bushes. And so, you know, be nice to people and be kind, and don't let these political differences basically ruin friendships.
Which, by the way, is huge. It doesn't seem like, if you're a free thinker, it doesn't seem that big, but just know that she's going against the cult. Just like saying that.
Well, so that's the thing. That whole story to me, I mean, first of all, I don't understand why anyone would be outraged at who Ellen is friends with in the first place, but whatever. Then she does her explanation. The whole thing seems like it should be dead at that point as a meme in the public consciousness, but it's not. Then we had articles like this pop out. This is an article on Fast Company. It's not about beliefs, Ellen. Why DeGeneres' weak defense of George W. Bush is a denial of reality. It's a denial of reality, Keri. She denied reality. And this isn't Sesame Street, Ellen.
That's such a hyperbolic title. It's the same way they say, like, your opinion is against my very right to exist.
Right. So actually, you've just summed up this entire article. It's basically that. George Bush, illegal wars and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And he was opposed to same-sex marriage, and he's a horrible... Let's look at this sentence. George W. Bush is a conservative Republican president the way Jeffrey Epstein is a finance guy. Wow. That's an analogy. That's quite an analogy. So this person gets all pissed off. And there's outrage here. But the reason I want to talk about it is actually because it's I'm a little bit ambivalent, not completely. Obviously, I already said what I thought about some of the outrage, right? So, but I'm a little bit ambivalent about this because I want to get your thoughts on this, Keri. So, by the way, this is an example of I haven't worked this out. I don't know what I think. I want to just have a discussion. So, bear with me if I'm not making a lot of sense or contradictory, because I'm not sure what I think about this.
No, I'm going to wait to pounce on you and then prove that I'm right. The way that
right, I'm actually saying it for the audience more than
I'm joking.
I know people are used to, like, this is the truth and I'm totally right 100%, and there's like, oh, no, we don't always know what we think. So I'm working this out, and on the one hand,
that's not what people should do in a conversation.
I know. Well, it'll be bad because I'll say something that will get taken out of context and then replayed and prove that I'm a Nazi or whatever. But yeah. So on the one hand, I do think clearly this reaction is hyperbolic about, like, oh my God, this isn't Sesame Street, Ellen. He's just like Jeffrey Epstein. Like, okay, that's insanity and hyperbolic, and it's policing friendships of someone that you don't have a personal relationship. So it's none of your freaking business who Ellen is friends with. So I totally agree with that. And I don't think that mass outrage is the appropriate response for Ellen being friends with George Bush, even if you think she shouldn't be friends with George Bush, right? Even if you think there's some reason why she shouldn't be friends with George Bush. I don't know that mass writing articles in Fast Company about it is a healthy, appropriate response anyway. I know that it's not. However, and I hear Ellen's like, oh, you should be friends with people regardless of their beliefs. However, as someone who thinks about ideas a lot and who thinks that ideas matter an awful lot. So I've talked about this before, but one of the...
Oh, I know why you're having trouble with this.
Yeah.
Keep going.
One of the problems with, I think one of the things that enables really bad ideologies like social justice to gain traction with ordinary people. So there are people who are, study it and they're bought in philosophically to it. And I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about ordinary people. One of the methods by which bad philosophy gets integrated and kind of mixed with good philosophy, because you can't live by horrible philosophy all the time. One of the vectors for that is acceptance of a really, really horrible philosophy of pragmatism, which is this idea that like ideas are like principles and values can be kind of balanced with each other. And, well, this is true in this case, but not in that case. And this is a general principle here, but not in these cases. And I'm just going to take ideas from different belief systems and kind of put them together in this sort of yin yang balance. And that's the kind of appropriate way to treat ideas and treat principles. And when you do that, first of all, conflicts in principles means that your model of the world is wrong, because there aren't conflicts in reality. So if you have conflicting principles, then that's a big problem. You're going to be making decisions and having opinions that some of which are guaranteed to be immoral because they're conflicting. So even if some of them are right, some of them conflict with those. So you're doing something wrong at that point. And it opens the door for people to come along and bring up really bad philosophy. Like, the social justice warriors can come along and say things like, well, I just saw a student get told this by her teacher in, I forget what state, whiteness is inherently racist, right? Well, if you don't really understand the concepts of racism and the concept of individualism and individual rights and what it means to have self-ownership and what it means to have moral responsibility and what free will means and how you assign moral responsibility, then you can maybe get sucked into that idea for a little while because you don't recognize that it conflicts with other values that you hold. And you have this pragmatic approach that even if it conflicts with other values, it's somehow practically useful to think that way. And it's not. And so the reason I'm struggling with this, Keri, is I would like to live in a society where we take ideas more seriously. I would not be friends with someone who had deeply different philosophic beliefs. And I guess I would be acquaintances. It doesn't mean I would treat them horribly, but I'd be friendly to them. So maybe that's what she means. She's friendly with George Bush. But I wouldn't be friends with someone who didn't share my values, just like I wouldn't marry someone who was a Zoroastrian or a Muslim, or I wouldn't even marry a Christian. I don't want to offend people on the show, but I'm an atheist. Like, I would only marry, and I wouldn't marry most atheists because most atheists are state theist, socialist, Marxist crazies. So, the people that I would have close relationships with, I need to share values. The reason that Keri and I are friends, the reason you and I are friends is, yes, we have some differences on the religious front, but we have a lot of shared fundamental values, and we work to make those integrated. And when we try and we kind of agree that, hey, if there's a contradiction here, it should be sorted out and fixed. But if you were a social justice warrior, you and I wouldn't be, if you're still a social justice warrior, we wouldn't be having this show. We wouldn't be friendly with each other. We wouldn't be talking to each other very much.
I disagree.
Okay, great. So this is why I'm having ambivalence. Because like, on the one hand, I want to have a world in which we take ideas more seriously and hold people accountable for the consequences of their beliefs. And on the other hand, I don't want to have a world in which we pile on Ellen for sitting next to George Bush at a football game. So what are your thoughts?
You're at a place where you don't actually know what you think because your beliefs your ideas about it are contradictory.
Right. So I'm not making a strong assertion, but I want to know what you think about this. And you're disagreeing with the
well, we've had this
points
I absolutely disagree with you. And I think it's a beautiful thing that she's friends with George W. And I think we need more of that. And the reason I disagree with you, we've had this discussion before. I'm still friends with some SJWs. And you couldn't understand that. Remember? We had off camera.
Oh yeah.
A big argument or a big discussion about a big discussion about me being friends with someone I used to work with who is still like a super SJW and
professional SJW, we'll call her.
Yes, professional SJW. But I love this lady, right. And we went to lunch, and it was a beautiful lunch, and we connected on certain things and other things we didn't. But that love is still there, and it was like she was trying to understand me a little bit better, and I was trying to understand where she's at a little bit better. And honestly, there are some cracks in her ideology. And so,
Okay.
and so you say you have to have some shared
Values.
values. I agree. A lot of SJWs, especially the ones with good intent, they think they have shared values with you. Their ideology doesn't actually, but they think they do. Those are the ones who are, you like myself, who can be pulled away and peeled off.
So would you say, I guess maybe we're getting to the heart of where I'm struggling here, because on the one hand, I see what you're saying and kind of agree that a lot of people have, we can just say even good intentions is a good way to describe this, right? A lot of people have good intentions, right? They are trying to be good. Even, let's just take SJWs. A lot of them think that they're actually fighting racism, for example, or they're actually fighting sexism. Like they actually believe that they're making the world a better place in that way. And they don't see the contradictions. And politically, you could say that about, Marxists. Maybe they actually think that's a better idea, right? So I do agree that there can be a distinction drawn between people who know what they're doing is evil and have ill intentions, and people who don't have, or have good intentions but don't get it. I guess the thing I'm wondering is, how much should intentions matter? Because the consequence, like,
you keep doing this.
I know. I haven't solved this.
In some ways, you were like an SJW, and that, I'm not saying that to.
No, I agree. I saw this and I was like, in some ways, I get what this SJW is saying, which is I'm admitting that, which is why I want to have this discussion.
Which is they're totalitarians. It's like you're with me or I'm writing you off. That's kind of what you are. In some ways, you're like either you are with the individual and you're fully where I'm at. Love. I've said this before, and I'm ripping off. I don't know who said this originally, but Michael Bernard Beckwith said it before. Love is meeting someone where they're at, but treating them like they were where you think they should be. So it's like, does that make sense? It's like you are focusing so much on, well, even if they have good intent, they're still part of an evil ideology. Yes, they are still part of an evil ideology, but you can't just like throw them out and it, in my opinion, those people can be they're still people. They're still wrapped up in, if you that's like throwing me out. I mean, I was
I'm not suggesting that there is a difference between me and the social justice warriors here. I'm not suggesting that you attack those people or treat them poorly, or like I'm not suggesting that you are uncivil to them or not treat them like human beings.
I know you're not like that. You're not like SJWs in that regard. I totally agree.
I'm just saying that, like, maybe it's best to like pick an exaggerated example, right? So if someone with good intentions is physically hurting you, right? The intentions are not relevant. It's their behavior that's relevant. You might understand, you might even choose to have empathy for them and understand, like, oh, this is why you're doing this. This is why you think hurting me is a good idea for some reason in this way. But their intentions are less important just from a selfish, like, so if you look at this from like, I want to convince the world, then you should be friends with them because you need to be friends with them and close to them in order to quote, save them, to convince them. But if you look at this from a more selfish, like self-preservation perspective, why would you spend time with people who are actively?
Because from a self-preservation perspective, you need people around you who disagree with you to keep you from becoming a monster. And to keep you from becoming a hypocrite, to keep you from becoming someone who's just like, I know good from wrong, to keep you from becoming like an SJW who's just like, I know everything that's right.
Yeah, I don't agree that you need people that disagree with you in your close life for that. I think you need people who will who are willing to disagree with you and challenge your ideas, and you need to read and be exposed to alternate ideas, right? I read Think Progress and Huffington Post crap, and like we read a bunch of, and Vice And sometimes, and I read this article in Fast Company, like I'll read the arguments, and sometimes in this example, I didn't just look at it and go, he's on the other side, screw him. I went, well, wait, do I kind of agree with part of him? Like I need to analyze this, right? So I think you need exposure to other ideas. I don't know that you need friends with vastly different
I think you do. I think you need friends with very different opinions, and I'm grateful for my friends with those very different opinions. And I would propose that you track down the SJW who wrote this and become good friends with him, because at least you guys agree on a couple things.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and this might be, look, maybe this is TMI in a personal thing. I have wasted so much time and energy in my life with toxic people in my life. And if I don't, the value to me personally of being friends with someone who's actively working to destroy Western civilization is just, I don't want it. I'm not a small talk kind of person. So like if I sat down with your friend, like if I were you and I sat down with your friend, there would be nothing else to connect on. Like
if you came to a picnic at my house, they'd be like, yeah, how's the potato salad? And you'd be like, you're trying to destroy Western civilization.
Kind of, right? Like, and maybe that's my own problem. Like, fine. But like, I'm not a small talk person. So I don't talk about sports. I don't like talking about weather. I hate gossip. Like none of that stuff, it's all irrelevant to me. I just don't care. So if someone like that is like, even if we agree, like, oh, did you watch the latest whatever show of something? And even if I
Voice, and I don't know,
like, I don't want to talk about it.
Carter, but can't you find, okay, so this book, I pulled this book out because this is what we're talking about. It's this book I've talked about before. It's Love Your Enemies by Arthur Brooks. And he talks about how you, and I've mentioned this before, you can have a very different what, but you can have a common why. And we often forget that. And so there are SJWs with whom you have a common why, at least as far as they are concerned. A lot of times they don't know what their ideology is really about. Some of them really don't. They really truly believe it's about ending racism or ending sexism. They've bought into it, right? And so if you were to ask, like this particular friend of mine, the one I went to lunch with, if you were to ask her, she and I have some very common whys. And so that's why we're friends.
But what do you get out of the friendship?
I love her. I like her as a person. Like she's there.
What does it mean to like someone as a person who's implementing evil? No, I'm okay. Being sincere. No. I'm not trying to pick on you.
She doesn't wake up in the morning and say, let me implement some evil, guys. Like she wakes up in the morning and believes her purpose is to do good and to end racism and sexism. Now, I think that you and I, our purpose is to, it's part of it, one little part of it is to end isms, or, the same.
We wake up similarly is what you're saying.
We wake up in a similar fashion. And so I can relate to her the same way I can relate to you, because we have shared values. Now, do I think that her ideology is super flawed? And do I think her ideology has her actually working as an agent of racism and sexism? Yes. And that's incredibly sad to me. But I don't reach her by writing her off and being like, hey, you're an agent of evil.
Sure, I agree. So hold on, I want to clarify, because you and I think often talk past each other because of this point. I agree, you can't reach her if you're not meeting her where she is. I'm not arguing that. I don't want to, I'm not caring about reaching her. That's not my goal, right? So I'm not trying to reach her. I don't care. I'm trying to talk to people generally, but not her specifically. Let me come up with an analogy. So let's say, this is a thought experiment. Let's say we're building a bridge, and I've got my friend. I'll have an SJW friend like you. I got my friend sitting next to me, and it's the olden days. So we're in a tent at a camp by the edge of a gorge, and we're building a wooden bridge over the gorge. And we wake up every morning and we make eggs and bacon together on the fire and talk about how we really want to build the bridge. And we both agree there needs to be a bridge. And I go cut down some wood and start hammering pieces of the bridge together. And my SJW friend, same intention, sets it on fire because that's what they think will be the best way to build a bridge, is to set it on fire. And every day I wake up and I'm like, hey, let's build a bridge. Yes, yeah, we're both you, build the bridge, great. Okay, I'm hammering some stuff and bam, gasoline matches come, bridge gets burned down. I don't know that friendship is valuable to me.
This is not a good analogy.
Okay, why?
Because this involves something physical that you can see that this person would have to be like completely stupid not to realize they're burning the bridge down.
I see.
So something intangible. It's not like she can look at it's not like her ideology is a physical bridge that she's setting on fire.
That's fair. So let's modify the analogy then. I'm building a more complex bridge. It requires math that I can do and they can't. They don't know that they can't do math because it's kind of complex. And they're adding pieces to the bridge and helping me build it, but they're doing it all wrong. And so the bridge is getting weaker and I know it will fail. And I have to go back and correct their work constantly. But I can't, as much as I try and explain math to them, they're not going to get the math.
Let me ask you a question. What if this person who doesn't understand the math is your child?
That's a really good question. I would argue that I am a parent. I would argue that because I've contemplated the likely possibility that my child will grow up at some point and, may go through a social justice phase, may stay being a social justice warrior. I mean, I hope not. I think I've inoculated her, but I could be wrong, right? And I'll still be there for her and love her. Yes, I will.
But to use your own questions, why? What do you get out of it?
Well, I think the parent-child relationship is slightly different. First of all, I view her as my responsibility. So cutting ties, like abandoning her as a project. So I would remain friends even with a friend who I somehow viewed it was my responsibility, or I thought there was like super value. This person definitely needs to be turned. Like if it was someone that I thought had the ability to cure cancer and they just needed to be pointed in the right direction and converted in deprogrammed, and they would go off and cure cancer, and it was that valuable, then I would probably deal with the personal discomfort and do it anyway. I'm coming from a perspective though of at this point in my life, I operate under I'm very protective of my time. I have a family. I work my ass off. I've got lots of other stuff going on. I have, I've spent a long time investing and advising companies. I used to get hundreds of requests a day for my time. Can I just take you out to coffee? Can we meet? I want advice about this. And it's not as much anymore, but still there's so many people that want my time that I need to be very strict with how much time I spend. And so if I contemplate going to a dinner date with someone or going to coffee with someone or hanging out with someone, that needs to provide me value in my life. It needs to make me happier and better, or better, at least, if not happier. I need to be a better person for that. And if it's a waste of my time, if we're going to go talk about television shows and recipes, I'm not interested. I'm too busy with people that I actually love and care about and things I actually love and care about in my life. So to me, it's not, I don't want to talk to you because you're a social justice warrior. I just don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my time.
But you're assuming, here's the problem with that, I think. It's yours, like an SJW, you're assuming all outcomes, and you're assuming that you're not going to learn anything from that person. You may go there thinking, I've been to things before. I'm like, what a waste of time. What a crap place to be at. And then I meet someone and we have a really great conversation and I learn something, or it makes me think about something in a different way, even if I disagree with them. And sometimes, especially if I disagree with them, it helps.
Absolutely. I'm not denying that can happen, but that argument can be taken to a ridiculous extension where, like, go talk to crazy people on the street of San Francisco because they might say something that's like, sure, it might happen, but like the odds are it won't. I have extremely intelligent friends who can play devil's advocate, and some of them actually do disagree on certain points. And I have some disagreements with with people that are in my life, but some of my friends are brilliant. I mean, like they're some of the smartest people I've even heard of. I mean, and so like having conversations with them, and sometimes I do have a few acquaintances who disagree with me, but they're acquaintances because there's some other project that we're working on that is a shared goal, like a bridge, and they're very good at actually building the bridge. And so philosophy and politics aren't necessarily things that would come up because there is something important to me that we're talking about. And when it does come up, sometimes I learn something from them, or we spar. But I intentionally expose myself to alternate ideas, but I don't do it. I do it through media, right? I do it through reading and listening to people who, I mean, I just listened yesterday. We spent an hour and a half listening to a social justice warrior lecture about something, right? So it's not that I don't expose myself. It's that I don't want to like have personal relationships. I don't want to be invested emotionally in someone that is really just burning the bridge.
Yeah, but that's why I asked the question about what if it was your child, because you are invested emotionally. And so
right.
I was hoping that could help you.
I would spend time with her because
would spend time with her. So that's I was asking that for a reason, because I'm emotionally invested in my friend. Not the same, she's not my child, but I use that as an example. I'm emotionally invested in her. I want good things to happen for her. I know she has good intention. She has a radically different ideological lens, like the glasses that she looks at the world through. I think they're flawed, and I think that she's seeing things in the wrong way, and I think that makes her an agent of this, evil that we talk about. She thinks she's working to end racism and sexism, but she's actually working to further it. Right. But she's not waking up in the morning thinking that's what she's doing.
No, I know that. Like, I get that. And I would say with a child, the emotional investment is twofold. One is it's much deeper than you can have with an adult. I mean, you change their diapers and like your emotional investment in a child is enormous.
You don't know what this friend and I have done. I'm joking.
Oh, it's the kinky episode. Yeah. So A, your emotional investment in child, but B, I take some responsibility, right? I feel like it's my obligation. Like I can't abandon her. I'm responsible for her life. So it makes me, it's a burden in the sense of like, if she turns out to be a social justice warrior, well, that's my job is to not cut that off. Even though other people, I'll be like, it's not worth my time. I can't say that because she's my responsibility. So I would have been responsible for putting a social justice warrior into the world. So like, that's not okay. So I need to help convert her or whatever. Now, I hate the word convert, deconvert. I need help, deprogram her and get her out of the cult, because I don't want to have contributed a cult member to the world, and it's bad for her. And I am emotionally invested on a deep level. And I guess I could see if there was a best friend that had been a best friend for years, like I know your relationship with this person. We won't go into it, but like, I know your relationship with this person is years old. You knew her from when you agreed ideologically. So
when I agreed with her, yes,
you get a long emotional investment.
Yes, I used to believe everything she believes.
Right.
And we used to work together and work towards some of the same goal. I still think we're working. That's why, again, I still think we have a shared why. It's just that I realized, hey, our shared goals, this ideology is not going to take us there. It's going to take us right around. So I got off that train.
Right. And I imagine, I'm just projecting, but I imagine that you also feel somewhat like, someone like the guy, I'm trying to use a good analogy, like a cult member who got out, and now you're like, oh crap, I have friends in there. I need to go, like,
oh yes, I have friends in the cult.
I need to go help them. They don't, oh my God. Right?
I don't necessarily view it that way. I don't make active entreaties to, my friends who are still SJWs. I don't actively try and pull them out. I just do what I do. And
right. But I assume that part of, I know you don't actively do it, but isn't in the back of your mind, aren't you hoping that they see your perspective?
I'm hoping they or any person in the cult sees what we talk about, and it helps wake them up a little bit. And I was saying this with one of our new followers. This is something I think about a lot. She was saying it felt like waking up to her. And I'm like, yes, it does feel like waking up when you start to get out of that cult or any cult, I'm sure. It's woke. We've talked about this before. Woke is past tense. Woke is like, I know everything already and there's nothing left to learn and it's done. It's finished. And that's what SJWs are like. They're like, we know everything. And like, these are my tenets and I'm just going to spit them out. And I don't actually engage in thought because, I'm woke. Everything's done.
Woke is over. Awakening is continuing.
Right. Awakening and waking up. That's a present tense thing. You're continuing to, you're evolving. You're continually learning. There are lots of things you don't know and you're aware of that you don't know these things. And so, yes. Anyway, I guess my point was that I hope any friends still in my life, I hope they look at what I'm doing and they are, maybe something sticks with them, or even people who are not my friends who are in the SJW world. I hope they look at what we're doing and are one little crack in their ideology is a great thing.
Yeah.
Look, can I just read this real quick? So this book I mentioned, Love Your Enemies, I highly recommend it to people. I think he gets some things wrong. We mentioned this before. He doesn't actually understand the cultural war we're in right now. He doesn't understand how prevalent my old ideology is, and he doesn't really understand how it is the enemy of a lot of the stuff he thinks that we all have in common.
Yep.
It doesn't. SJW ideology is not about talking with people who disagree with you. That's why these SJW friends of mine, the ones who still want to hang out, I'm like, it is a beautiful thing because even by hanging out with me, they're doing what Ellen is doing.
I see. They're already indicating that they're having second thoughts because they're hanging out with you.
Well, not that, but they're being seditious. You're not supposed to talk to me. If you're in the cult, I'm an apostate, guys. And I respect that and I admire that. And so anyway, he's got this chapter called Please Disagree With Me. And he talks about Aristotle talking about the 3 different types of friends and how the third one is called the third one is like the perfect friendship. And that's someone with whom you share, here he says, hold on. The highest form of friendship, the perfect friendship in Aristotle's telling, is one based on willing the good of the other and a shared sense of what is virtuous and true. Well, that goes along with what you're saying and with what I'm saying. My SJW friend and I, we have a shared sense of what is virtuous and true. It's just that her ideology has her working against that. But we have a shared sense of what is virtuous and true. That's why we're still friends. And so he gives an example of Cornel West, who is on the left, of course, and his very good friend, Robbie George, who's they both are professors at Princeton, and Robbie George, who's on the right, and how these guys like completely conflict on ideology and they're at odds on almost everything, except they have an underlying sense of what is true and what is important. And they speak of each other with such love and with such gratefulness that they have one another to disagree with. So that they, it's like what is it? Like iron sharpening iron. Like you need someone around.
I think that's the Bible verse, iron sharpening iron. Isn't that right?
Right. You need someone around who's going to help you, first of all, keep you in check so you don't just become in an ideological bubble.
Right.
And you don't become the monster you're fighting. And then also somebody disagrees with you. I know you say you get it from other sources and you don't need a friend who does this, but I'm happy that I have friends who do it because they do it with love. And I do it with love with them. We disagree, and I'll disagree with some of these friends in a kind of a playful, loving way, and they know that they're safe with me and I'm safe with them to have like these big disagreements, and they're safe being seditious with me. But it helps me sharpen my opinions. That's why I argue with SJWs. It helps me sharpen my arguments.
I do think talking to the other side helps sharpen arguments and opinions. Absolutely. Like I don't disagree with that. I guess I'm just drawing a distinction between friends. I mean, I take Aristotle though in a different sense than when he says that. So when you use words like, we'll just use the word love, even though not everyone uses the word love to mean friendships, but whatever, there's different levels of love. So, what you love about someone is their virtues, right? It's the things, you don't love. I mean, if you love flaws about someone, I don't think that's actually that's more of an indictment of your psychology, right? You love what's virtuous about other people.
Yes, and my friend, I think her virtue is that she thinks we have a shared goal. That's what I'm saying.
But not really. So this is where I'm breaking from this in certain circumstances. Like, you could both say you're against racism, right? So you have that shared goal. Let's just use racism as an example because we talked about it recently.
And she and I do have that shared goal.
Right.
And in her mind, she's working towards ending it.
Right. But I would argue, and I might be wrong about this, friend, so you can correct me, but I'm just imagining a social justice warrior here. I would argue that that shared goal isn't actually a shared goal. You share some sounds and syllables called, we don't want racism. You share an opposition to the syllables, the sounds of the word racism. But her definition, what she means by racism, when she says, I don't like racism, that's not the same thing that you mean when you say you don't like racism. So you're just using two different languages and pretending that you have a shared goal, when in fact, you just have the same label for two different things.
No, I totally disagree, Carter. She thinks when she thinks of racism, she thinks of it like you and I do. She's not thinking of something different.
She doesn't think it's prejudice plus power?
No, there's cognitive dissonance there. That's the whole prejudice plus power thing. When you get down to the heart of it, the people who preach that, they don't really believe that. Like, they know that racism is racism deep down, but they've been programmed to say, oh, but this type of racism does not exist. Like, and this is, that's why it's hard to have conversations with them, because they get really emotional. If you push this whole thing about the definition of racism, for example, they get emotional and they get really wound up, and they get triggered because of cognitive dissonance. It's like, think of a brain a brain that knows something, but then also has been hot wired in this other way.
Right. No, I get the cognitive dissonance. I just.
But if you ask her what racism is, she'll write that down. She'll probably say prejudice plus power and blah 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 blah. But on another level, she thinks of it as the same way that I do.
How is it the same? Because when I think of racism, to me, even to call someone racist or to say something someone did was racist, it's a moral judgment based on the concept that you have free will and you're responsible for the choices you make, and you're not responsible for the choices that you don't make. So you're not responsible for your groups you belong to that are immutable. You are responsible. And so it's this idea that you treat people based on, we can MLK this, right? Based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin or other immutable traits. So how is that the same as
you
thinking?
Even as you're doing right, you are a conscious person, you're awake, and you are talking about someone, to go back to what we were talking about before, you were talking about someone who's not awake. And you're saying, but why aren't they awake? Her brain is not working the way that yours, and I was an SJW. You're not thinking when you're an SJW. You're not turned on. Your light is not turned on. Your brain is not working in the same way. You're not thinking. And you're trying to hold a person who's in some ways a zombie to the same standards of, like, well, why don't you just run it through your intellectual consistency machine and make sure that you're being consistent? Well, they don't run that machine.
So then I guess we're just going to come first full circle, because my answer to that would be, I don't want to be friends with zombies.
Well, I do. I mean,
what makes you valuable is your thinking machine. If you're not using it, that's not an interesting friendship to me.
No. Oh my gosh, Carter. Okay. Yeah. We're not going to get anywhere today.
I don't know that we will. And by the way, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, because I told you at the beginning, I'm ambivalent about this a little bit. So I'm not totally sure. I'm arguing the side that I know you don't like, so that we can have an argument, but I am ambivalent about it.
What's that movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger's daughter becomes a zombie? What if your daughter became a zombie? that will, to go back to making it personal.
Well, again, I feel responsible for my daughter. So it, I would I put up with my daughter. So look, I put up with stuff from my daughter that there's no way in hell I would put up with from adults. And I always will, right? I'm partly because that's what I signed up for when I had a kid. I was like, okay, I'm responsible for this human and how this human turns out, not to deny her free will, but I'm going to be there doing my best, and that's what I've signed up for. So
I have a couple of observations about you.
Yeah.
and about me.
Uh-oh.
I would say, I don't know your big five, but I would say that I'm probably much higher on neuroticism than you are.
Yes.
But you think so?
Well, I actually took Jordan's Big Five personality test years ago before he was. Yeah.
I know. Okay, but this is how that doesn't really relate. I'm just saying that so that softens the next part in case you care. I think I'm also much higher on openness than you are.
Maybe, although based on I can actually I don't know my Big Five personality results, but my wife does because when I met her before we were married, I met her and her role was to review my test results and other people's test results. So
I did not know that.
She knows the answer to that question.
And she still married you?
Yeah, and the only reason I would push back on the openness is, I mean, maybe I have considered a lot of different ideas. I've just settled on some and I am having this, I am considering this. I also have been an entrepreneur my entire life, which is generally super high openness.
Right.
And I have an entrepreneurial bug, but who knows? Maybe I'm low openness. I don't know.
Well, relative to me, I think
maybe you're 100% open. I mean,
first of all, I joined a cult.
Yeah, fair. Maybe you're right, Keri. Maybe you have too much openness.
And I just joined 3 pyramid schemes, so
yeah. Actually, I take all that back. I would like to have slightly higher openness than you, babe. So, I have less openness than the 3 pyramid schemes. Fair enough. Well, hey, power lasted. We didn't solve anything, but I hope this was an interesting discussion for people because it's something that I'm struggling with, and I'd love to hear people's comments, what you guys think about this. But it is an issue that, I don't know, I just don't know where I stand on it, and I love that Keri can talk to me about it and disagrees and can make good arguments about it. So, but my power lasted. So, yay, we have a whole episode. Who the hell knows what we're going to do tomorrow with power? Because I don't think we'll have power tomorrow. I'll have to figure out some way to remotely do deprogrammed.
I think you need to redistribute some of that power, white man.
Apparently I am. I'm being forced to redistribute there was a guy on Twitter who I am at, sometimes people are amazingly bitter to me. He was like, you morons who built your homes near places where there could be forest fires are the problem. You deserve no power. And I'm like, first of all, that's not how power grids work. They shut off the whole grid and it affects people who aren't necessarily near fire zones. Second of all, this house has been here from the 60s, never burned down. I don't think this is a problem about where people built. The entire Bay Area is shut down. Sometimes people are just so oddly angry at other people and really want to be mean. And I know that's a trite thing to say about Twitter. I'm just still surprised sometimes how random strangers can be like, screw all you people. I'm like, wow, yeah. That's
it's very dark. Mom. It's very dark. Hey, I want to end with one thing about friends.
Okay.
Okay. Because I am the one arguing, look, I am friends with some good friends, I think, with some SJWs still. Don't let that friendship though cause you to sacrifice your beliefs or your opinions. Don't pull your punches. Don't be like, well, I'm friends with this person, therefore I'm going to excuse their beliefs. No, I don't do that.
Show up 100% as you.
Show up 100% as you. Don't pretend. And I'm saying this because I know, especially women, not always, but women on average, I think, are more often likely to be pleasers and shapeshift sometimes. Don't shapeshift with your friend because that's not doing them any favors.
It's dishonest. It's inauthentic.
Yeah, it's dishonest and inauthentic. And I try and separate the person from their beliefs. I don't always succeed at doing that. Sometimes I lump them in with their ideology, like we all do. But most of the time I try and acknowledge, like, this is a person, but their beliefs are evil, I think, or their beliefs are wrong, flawed, whatever word you want to use. But they're not. They're just possessed by this thing that I think is really wrong. I'm possessed by individualism. They're possessed by collectivism, right? And so if you can address that thing, even, we mentioned this before, there's an SJW I still follow, Jay Smooth, Ill Doctrine on YouTube. He doesn't make videos really anymore, but he has an old video. And again, he's an SJW, and he has a video about like how to tell someone that something they're saying is racist without calling them a racist. And he makes a very good point. People get really defensive. Don't make it about them as a person. Don't make it about their intent. That's what they do. They come in, they call you names. SJWs say, oh, you're this, you're that, you're blah, blah, blah. Don't say that about them if you can help it. Say your belief system is this way, your ideology is this way. And that way you can stay true and still be a good friend to them and not insult them as a person, but you can be head on with don't pull your punches about that ideology, because that ideology is evil.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it's reminding me of one other thing now you're making me want to say, because we said this a while ago, but we've got a lot of new subscribers since a couple months ago when I think I last said this. When you marry yourself to the conclusions that you have, your beliefs, then you often tend to conflate an ideology or those belief systems with your person, with who you are.
With your identity. Yeah.
Right. And that means when someone attacks those things, you feel personally attacked, like your identity is attacked. And my method is as strongly as I hold a lot of opinions, and I do hold a lot of opinions very strongly and argue vociferously. However, what I strive to be married to is the process. It's reason. I'm married to the epistemology. I'm married to like reason, evidence. That's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use reason and evidence. That's what I'm clinging to. So if I stay married to that and that's part of my identity, then having to change my mind because someone out-argued me or showed me evidence that made me change a conclusion doesn't require changing my identity. It's not a threat to my identity. Like if Keri convinces me in this conversation that I should be friends with her, whatever, it doesn't hurt my identity. It will be a result. It's actually me sticking to my identity, which is I'm using reason. And that means I'm drawing conclusions to the best of my ability using reason. And so sometimes new information comes along and you change your mind about stuff. I think that's much healthier than marrying the conclusions. And we live generally in a culture that you marry conclusions, and that's how you get tribalism.
Right. That's a great point. And one last thing. I know you're adding little things now.
I love that we have 8 last things.
Okay. Okay. But one last thing about the whole, you have to be willing to lose your friends. You just have to be willing to lose them. You have to stay true to what you believe. And like Carter said, recognize that what you believe are just beliefs, and those things are capable of being changed. And, you know, if presented with reason and evidence to change them, you will do that. But the point is, like, don't be a pleaser in that, like, oh, I want to stay friends with this SJW, therefore I'm going to let that desire manipulate and pull me towards, no. Like the ones that I'm still friends with, it's a small percentage of the ones I used to be friends. Almost all my SJW friends unfriended me. And that's okay. And you have to be willing to lose friends because you're standing for truth. You're going to make much better friends. And by the way, and the ones who stick around, the SJWs who stick around, those are interesting people. I'm glad they stuck around. I want to know why they did. I want to know why they're happy to have seditious lunches with me.
And you're happy. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I've heard you say this before. You're happier having lost those friends and stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I finally watched all of Sockmatician's video, and I felt so sorry for him talking about some of the friends who backstabbed him and betrayed him, his personal assistant.
Heartbreaking.
heartbreaking. But at the same time, aren't you so glad that you found out what those people are? That they're not real friends? You burnt the dead wood off, dude. In a way, like, that is a blessing. The dead wood has been burned, and now new growth can happen. Now green things can start growing. Now you can make lasting friendships with people who actually are friends and not friends.
Well, you've said before, Keri, SJWs don't have friends, they have allies.
Yes.
And noticed that as soon as you stopped being an SJW, very few were friends.
Yeah, they don't have friends, they have allies. And the minute you don't have a shared ideology, almost all of them, with a few exceptions, almost all of them are going to be like, see, I don't want to be.
Well, Keri, thank you for indulging me in this discussion. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. You can support us.
Tomorrow. Okay, so I'm so happy because it's finally starting to look like fall here. It's like overcast and starting to, like in Texas, it feels like summer. Even in October, it's like, 100 degrees. But yesterday and today, it's like, oh my gosh, it looks like fall. And October is my favorite month for several reasons. But one, tomorrow is my birthday. And I hope you guys will come to celebrate on Deprogrammed with us. Mike, my good friend Mike Harlow, is going to be our guest. And maybe I'm asking Gracie if she can come too. We'll see.
It's 11 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. Just to be clear, because sometimes it's at 10, sometimes we swap. So tomorrow's 11. Who knows? I may be calling from an iPhone in a car. I don't know how I'll be on, but I'll be there.
You need to give up some of that power, Carter.
I know. My white privilege card isn't going to work to keep on the electricity. I'm very upset about that.
You should call the power company and say, but dude, I'm
a white male.
I'm a straight white male, guys.
I thought we were in charge.
I thought we had all the power.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and you can go to unsafespace.com to support the show with Bitcoin, or it'll also link you to our Subscribe Star where you can support there so that we can keep the lights on most of the time.